Hi, good morning once again. Welcome to The Big Issue. Very big welcome to our TV viewers. My name is Selim Adunu. Two matters we're discussing today. Indeed, the first part of the show is gone. We spoke to Professor Raymond Atuguba, who delved into the matter of law and cultural practices. And in his view, the way out of our current developmental mess is a cultural one. And indeed, he supported that with Article 39 of the Constitution and also Section 54 of the Courts Act. Very interesting discussion we've had there. You can get it on social media if you missed it. But we'll continue with that discussion now on a panel to look at the matters of law and culture and what has been happening at Nungwa in respect of the Gborbu Wulomo's alleged marriage to the young girl, initially reported to be 12 years, became 13 years, now 16 years we hear. What does that mean for the child? What does that mean for our cultural tradition? Culture and tradition clashing, where do we draw the line? Indeed, Professor Atuguba says you resolve it in favor of the law because the law is what we have all agreed to govern us, and so that's what it is. My guests for this segment of the program is Bright Appiah, Executive Director, Charles Wright International, very instrumental in all these matters and bringing the matters to light. Dr. Hilda Boy, President, Pediatric Society of Ghana, they've also spoken on the matter. They spoke from a very technical point of view. Reginald Nibi Ayibonte is a traditional person. He's a lawyer. He's a former member of parliament for the Ododo-Diodio constituency. Gentlemen and lady, welcome to the program. I started with you, Bright. You were quite key in this. I've read your statements. I think you issued one yesterday or 2 days ago. Now tracking how things have gone and how matters have evolved. Initially, we heard the lady was 12 years old, which created a lot of consternation, raised a lot of alarm. 12-year-old girl getting married to a 63-year-old, raised a lot of eyebrows. The matter evolved. They said she was 13, now we hear she's 16. And so it wasn't a marriage, and then it wasn't a marriage to the Gborbu Wulomo. They said it was a marriage to the deity. And I know that story is still evolving. Looking at all of this, when you put all of this together, what do you make of it? What does it tell you?
Well, for me, looking at what we've seen so far and the inconsistencies that has been created as a result of this, point to the fact that there's a lot that we need to know about the concept of tradition in this context and what the role of a child should be in all that. And one thing that we should also take note of is the fact that issues of children is governed by law. So in using a child to exercise a certain duty within a traditional context or any other form, you must also recognize what the law says about children before you can engage them. So looking at the story, clearly, I know you've heard a lot, but to even place it in a context, when we went into it, we were told that it's a tradition, it's a culture that must be a culture that must be practiced. For that matter, the person who is qualified to do that must be a virgin. So a virgin is needed to perform that act. So it's as a result of that they selected this particular girl to do that. There are other narratives going on around her in terms of her birth and other things, which in terms of child protection issues, I cannot go into it in details. Then the narrative moved from that cultural practice to a situation where they claim that the girl is being married to the priest who is taking care of the deity.
On your screen now is that ceremony.
Exactly.
Exactly. You see a lady speaking as the MC, and
and all these things were given and
gifts given to the family and all of that.
Yes.
Yesterday says no, it wasn't a marriage. That's a lady in the middle there, dressed, and so the picture there's a lady and all of that. So that's what we are referring to. But now they have said that it wasn't a marriage.
Yes.
But there were items normally for the bride's family. All of that. As a lady walking in the middle of the Wulome, performing some rites and all of that.
So when all these things came out, we questioned even the circumstances under which the rites were being performed, because clearly this is an organized event where the activities that characterize the whole event shows that it's a marriage ceremony that is being performed. So when the issue of law came in, then the narrative moved from marrying the girl to the priest to the deity. And then in the concept of that, we also raise the issue that, look, the law is clear that you cannot marry a child who is a person who is below the age of 18 in any kind of marriage at all. So even if we'd want to legitimize a spiritual marriage, that cannot happen between a person who is below the age of 18 years. And then the another argument that came out was that it's not even a marriage to the deity, but it's a rite that must be performed on behalf of the deity, and the duties that the child is going to perform is clearly spelled out within their traditional system. So we were also trying to question some of these things, because once it's about a child, there are certain things that you also have to observe. And one of the things that the law lay more emphasis on when it comes to children is the issue of capacity, and also ability of the child to express him or herself in participating even in the process of doing that. So, and if you look at some of the duties, you realize that at a certain point, the child or the person in question must fetch water for the deity, and the person must travel a certain distance to be able to do that. So one of it has to do with that the child must travel from Nungwa to Ayi Mensa on the Bri Road to be able to do that. So the issue of capacity also comes in. So in performance of that duty, some of these things must also be taken into consideration, whether or not the child will have capacity to do that. There are spiritual issues, which of course people believe in, and there are physical things that we also have to measure things against, because once you are a child, the law puts a certain embargo on you in terms of what you can do and what you cannot do. So that is where we are now in terms of how culture invite children into their fold to perform certain functions that we thought the law is against, or more or less would affect the development of children. And we did that on the basis that, look, our legislations about children places a child within 4 cardinal principles. And it's so clear that, one, the best interest of the child should be paramount. The education of the child is a right that the child must enjoy. And the protection and the health of the child is also key. And one thing that sometimes we even forget has to do with the right to participation. So these are things that we have to measure the participation of the child within the context of tradition, as to whether indeed the child is well placed within the traditional system to perform certain functions that will not be against the principles of right or the welfare principle that you mentioned. So we've measured all of that and realized that no, there are issues. So we decided to invite the police in and then social welfare department to take certain steps to first investigate the matter, to come to some conclusion to see whether or not there's an abuse or there's any criminality in the matter, which they did. And once they have rescued the child, we thought that would start the whole process of investigation, and then also placing the child in a certain environment that will be conducive for the child. And when it comes to the welfare of the child, I can say on this table that yes, a lot has gone into it, and I can also confirm that she's doing well, and a lot of psychologists are working on her, case managers are also taking care of her, and then the caregivers are also doing what they are supposed to do. Then the issue of age also came in.
Yeah.
Initially, we had 12 years. At the point, we had 16. And per the investigation that we've done so far, the girl is 15, yet to attain the age of 16 years. So clearly, even if, let's assume that she's 15, there are certain things that she cannot do under that. So looking at all these narratives that we've had up to this point, we think that it's enough for us to investigate the matter and then do what is needed. And I'm also told that the police has invited the man in question to make a statement, so that they can take the matter from there. So, so far as we are concerned, this is where we are, and looking at the issues happening around it is not an issue that we just have to take on the surface, because first we need to understand, just as Prof mentioned, there are certain cultural practices that is mentioned, but if you go into it properly, you understand the details of it. And sometimes on the surface, certain things are mentioned, but when you go deep into it, you realize that some of the cause, some of the things that they do are really against human right, and for that matter, you need to stand against some of these things. So it is for us to understand their cultural practices, and whether or not, when children participate in the process, there are certain protection mechanisms around it that will guarantee the safety of the child and the performance of those duties, and whether or not those cultural practices would have effect on the child's health, or will have effect on the education of the child. These are things that the state do not compromise on it at all. That no matter what the child does, the right to education must be secured. It should be guaranteed in that context, and the health condition of the child must be guaranteed. So it is for the state to go into it and then measure all these things and see whether what they have subjected the child to is right, and it is appropriate for the child to even go through that. And a lot of, we've had opportunity to access certain information. Even the age of the child is now known, and it's still investigations are going on to
determine the age of the child.
Yes.
Okay.
But
so we've not seen a birth certificate yet.
No. They've not seen the birth certificate.
Do you know what class
the record from the school?
So what class is she in? Do we know that?
Yes, we know. We know all this information, but because of what is happening, it's a bit difficult for us to put some of this information out there, because there's a lot, and even the privacy and the dignity of the child has been compromised in the process. Pictures are all over the place and all that. So we thought that the best we can do is to keep certain information that can also help in the process. You know, a lot they've carried out the medicals on her, and certain outcomes are on the table.
Medicals in terms of what?
Oh, the total, once you want to write a social inquiry report on a child, it requires that you carry out certain things. And I think that the social welfare department has carried out all that, and they have the report. But it's not. I don't have the authority to disclose the report. But what I can say is that certain outcomes are looking good, and we also are calling for deeper medical report to go into a lot of things, and I'm sure when the results come, all of us. So medical
reports, of course, not to go into the details, but quite curious. Medical reports saying what? Whether she's sick or not, or what?
Well, sometimes in writing a social inquiry report, the circumstance of the case will determine the kind of medical report that you have to undertake. So now, what brought about the whole issue has to do with marriage. And once marriage is contracted, you know what happens afterwards.
Okay.
So certain those things can also be taken into consideration. And then also the status of the child, whether what the child has gone through would have some kind of health implication on her, psychologically, or even the state of the body. So there are certain medical report, medical tests and other things that they will carry out. And I'm sure that is what they've done, looking at the circumstance of the case. You know, that is why I'm saying that certain things are looking good. Some of the things that we feared could have happened did not, based on the report that we've seen so far.
I see. Very well. So that's right up here. Let me speak to Dr. Hilda Boy, president of the Pediatric Society of Ghana. They were one of the first people as well, of course, Child Rights International, Pediatric Society of Ghana, one of the first people also to issue a statement condemning this so-called child marriage to the Gborbu Wulomo. Dr. Hilda Boy, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Yes, we've seen your statement, quite strongly worded, and the fact that you were uncompromising in condemning what it was or what was reported to be the case at that time. What has the position changed from your side? Because it does appear that the narrative is now evolved quite a bit. Is the position of the society still the same? The statement you've issued is still stand by it, even though the facts may have evolved a bit?
Yes, we still stand by it, and the reason is that now we know that it's under investigation. All we sought to do was to highlight the fact that it's a problem if we have a child marrying in Ghana, and if this is happening in a situation that involves somebody who is a respected person in the community, then that's also a problem for us. So what we are doing is seeking to use this as a platform to discuss this very important issue of child marriages while doing our bit to also to support and ensure that she receives all the care that she needs. I'm aware that the police is undergoing the investigations, and we are all keenly hoping to see that everything goes well.
I see. So 12 years, at the time you issued the statement, we understood at the time that she was 12 years. Now we heard she's 16. And from the calculations, maybe she's 15 actually, like what Brighter Pierre just said, because she was born in 2008, July. We are not yet in July. So now as we speak, if that is anything to go by, we've not seen the birth certificate, but that's their own narrative. She should be 15, though they say 16. Does that change anything, or it's still the same? Because 3 years from 12 will give you 15. That's quite a lot of time, or not. Does that change anything at all? Because people thought that you issued a statement from a medical point of view, quite a technical point of view, in terms of the fact that at that 12-year-old age, her systems wouldn't have been properly or fully developed. And so once it was marriage at the time, the next thing is for the marriage to be consummated, then childbirth comes in and all of that. That's how a lot of people understood your statement to be concerned about. Has anything changed in respect of that?
A 15-year-old is still a child. A 16-year-old is still a child and hasn't reached the age of 18 where they can consent to a marriage or become married. So we still stand by that, and it's still concerning whether 15-year-old, 16-year-old, 17-year-old, or 12-year-old is still concerning, or under that is still a concerning age to be married.
I see. So what's the position of the society? Are you convinced by explanations given by the proponents, the Nungwa stool and the Gborbu Wulomo's people and all of that, that she's not getting married to the man, but it's a marriage or an engagement with the deity? Is that convincing enough for you? Do you accept that?
For us, I sort of stand and agree with a number of the things that Mr. Appiah has mentioned in the studio about their marriage. The fact that it's a marriage, whether to an individual, an animal, a deity, and all that, once you use marriage, then that's a problem. So I think it's a good time for us to examine all the cultural practices that we have and see if there are any of them that are impacting negatively on the lives of our children. Let us see how we can modify things to ensure that the well-being of the children are protected and prioritized.
I see. So you hang in there. Let me speak to Bright. Of course, Nibi Aibonte, Honorable, will be joining us pretty shortly. His views on this will be quite interesting because he is a traditional man as well, and he's a lawyer too. But he'll be joining us, of course. Bright Appiah is a lawyer too, so he speaks from that context too. So you talked about you talked about the treatment of the child, and the fact that the child's picture and things are out, but they are creating the impression that this is actually a good thing for the child. And so I don't know what your investigation also revealed. We were told that the child is given the best of treatment. She's driven to school. She's in one of the best schools in the community and all of that. Did your research or your inquiry confirm that?
Well, I won't dispute that, but our research did not also confirm that position as to whether the kind of picture that is given about the girl is what she's enjoying. She looks very, very, very innocent. You know, when you look at the girl and you put all the investigations and then the discussion that have ensued between her and some professional people, the conclusion that all of them are coming into is that she's a very innocent girl. And that suggests that she's not been maltreated. because her demeanor would give you a certain picture, you know. So there are quite some issues that people are using to influence certain things around her. You know, some of them are still under a careful study to see whether or not they can deal with that, because that is the work of the expert, to be able to watch a certain trend and come out with certain conclusions and all that. So I cannot confirm whether she's been driven to school, and I cannot also say that they don't do so. But I'm looking at the child in question.
I can confirm that she's in one of the best schools in the community?
Yeah, a school is a school. And so far as the child is concerned, the child's right to education cannot be denied. It doesn't matter the school that the child attends. So I cannot give that picture, because she can attend the best of the schools, but suffer certain abuses and all that. So she's in school. As for that one, I can confirm that. And all arrangement is being done by social welfare department to also, wherever she is, to provide her with some tuition, because of what they are doing, she is under a certain strict care where everybody is trying to do their best. So for that, that is it. But when it comes to the system itself, so now you see the child is now under the care of the state. So most of the things that would happen to the child, they must be viewed from that point of view. First, I know there's been a series of meetings, even at the level of the interministerial meetings on this particular case. So it should tell you
interministerial,
the gender, culture, chieftaincy,
and culture, religion,
information, and other departmental institutions, to make sure that they provide a certain pathway in terms of what they need to do for the welfare of the child. And I seriously commend the Department of Social Welfare for the work that they've done so far, and even the minister designate for the gender ministry. Every morning she checks up on the girl every morning, and I think that it's one of the things that we want to see. And looking at how they've even paid attention to the girl in terms of her protection. You know, sometimes when you are talking about, people feel like you are talking about a real issue. And for the real issue, we're still establishing that there must be a proper investigation to the matter to determine whether there's any criminal act that can be prosecuted or not. But the state of the child is what I'm so much interested in, and where she is now, and the steps that the state has taken to protect her. I think that it's a good thing.
But does the child know what she's going through? Does she understand the gravity of all that is happening?
Initially,
I don't know whether to say married to a deity or married to the...
No. I think
does she know what's happening?
Not at all. Per the initial investigation or the assessment of her, do not give that kind of a picture.
No, but if she's 15 or 16, she should have some sense of that.
Yes, but...
Because there's a whole ceremony. People have come there because of you. And all the commentary and all the remarks and comments made at the event, the MCs and all of that, she should have a sense of what's going on.
That's supposed to be, but per the information that we have now, she looks very innocent, and some of the issues, she doesn't have a proper understanding of it. That is why even the age, I'm sure they want to go in further to understand, to have a proper understanding of the age and how she responds to some of these things and all that. So, and it's about her, and I feel that it's the work of the expert to be able to bring her to that level to appreciate what is going on. And for the child to also come to that level and not having a clear understanding of certain matters, and if her understanding of or appreciating certain matters does not correspond with the age, then it also raises issues of abuse as to how is she being trained, what kind of exposure are we giving to the child to even understand what she's doing. Because one of the things that the law calls for is that for a child to even participate in certain activities, the child must have a full understanding to be able to express his or her opinion on those matters. So if at this level, we cannot guarantee that the child have a full understanding of her engagement in the process of all this, let's even assume that it's a cultural practice and they are doing it so well, they are protecting the child, But once the child do not have a full understanding of that cultural practice, then that also raises issues as to whether the right thing is being done. So those are the things. But for us, the safety or the kind of mechanisms that they've built around the child since they rescued her, I can say that the state has done a good job, and we expect that the same will be done in any other matters relating to the welfare of children.
I see. This is a big issue, 97.3 Citi FM on Citi TV and on our socials. We're looking at the issue of the alleged child marriage at Nungwa between the Gborbu Wulomo and the now 16-year-old, we are told, and what that means. My guests this morning, of course, the first part of the show had Professor Raymond Atugba, Dean of the University of Ghana School of Law, who made some interesting points. I have Bright Appiah, Executive Director, Child's Right International, Dr. Hilda Boy, President of the Pediatric Society of Ghana. A few of your messages that have come through so far. This one from Samia Denta says, Salam, great discussion for open and deep minds. My thoughts. Some of the laws we have today, we didn't need them and we were considered backward and not enlightened. I think our culture and way of life got us covered more than we were stripped of it and foreign ideologies introduced. I think about FGM and some of the UN charters it is believed to infringe on. My mind goes to how these same characters or these same charters can make legal something like sex changes, which involve a crazier mutilation of genitals. You see, that's Sami Adent, of course, referencing the earlier discussion we had and the talk about FGM, etc. This one says that this is the first time in my 40 years that I have heard a real Ghanaian intellectual who really understands what he's saying, and have added him to the likes of Thomas Sowell. He never mixes the answers up, and we need to hear him more on real education, and very refreshing, you say. This one, okay, all right, so fine. So there's some video, of course, on the at a press conference addressed by the proponents of this ceremony, the Gborbu Wulomo's people, explaining some of the controversies surrounding the child's age and all of that. Shall we look at it and then come back?
After the demise of the former occupant, which was over 300 years ago, it fell on now Okromo, who was prophesied by her birth to take up the mantle as now Yomo Ayemwede. Now Okromo remained in her mother's womb for about 2 years before her birth. Through the interventions of the Gborbu deities, she was delivered and consecrated. She sat without walking for 2 years. Through divine interventions, consultations, and prayer to the Gborbu deity, she stood to walk. This makes her a mystery child. She has been preserved in maintaining her virginity till now to assume her role as Nayomo Ayemwede, which she began 6 years ago. She was chosen by the Gborbu deity for this role. Events that unfold on Saturday saw some excesses, like all other events, of which verbal misrepresentation and other exaggerations by some people who took over the microphone after the actual MC is done with the presentation. We wish to debunk and disassociate ourselves from this misrepresentation and over-exaggeration, which without doubt are the cause of this disaffection.
The girl in question is actually 16 years old. We accept and agree that by the constitution of the land, she is underage, but she is not married to the Gborbu Wulomo as it is being stated. That is not the issue.
Statement from the police that the young lady who is our queen is under police protection. Therefore, if the police have remarked that she is under police protection, where again do you want to find her? But we are telling the world that she is our royal. And if the police are saying they are taking care of her, then the police must be reminded that whatever happens to her, then traditionally we will deal with the police. People are speculating that Gborbu Wulomo has married a younger woman below age. Please, press, we lay it before you. Because most of these unacceptable statements here and there are from the telephones of people who classify themselves as
social media.
Social media.
Bloggers.
And bloggers. Wait until we clarify ourselves and get out of this mess. And we are going to, without mincing words, all those that have denigrated the image of the Gborbu Wulomo and those persons behind the scenes that want to destroy the integrity and the social well-being and again the tradition of the Gadangme people, we will deal with them. Because Gadangme, we have an identity, and our identity has much to do with the worship of our deities and our spirits. If our spirits are doing things with us, we deal with our spirits. If you are not part of us, you cannot decide for us.
Oh, yeah. All right, so this was at a press conference. When the matters came to a head, they had to respond. So they dealt with the matters of the age, clarified that she wasn't 12 or 13. They said she was 16, but by their own account, it doesn't appear she's 16. She should be 15, approaching 16, because they said she was born in July 2008. And July 2008 means that right now she's 15, approaching 16. They also had a few things to say to the police, that now that they say that they are royal, or in the custody of the police should be careful. If anything happens to her, they will come after the police and all of that. And in fact, the commentary from the MCs, and indeed the Gadangme Council said that some of these MCs embellish things and make it lively. That's why the women were talking about the girl shaking herself, wearing short things and serving the man well and all of those things. When you put all of those together and match it against what they are telling us today, that it wasn't a marriage, it's quite interesting. But of course, there's still investigation, and we hope that the investigations will end quickly or soon so that we know what the real issues are. Dr. Hilda Boy, there are many issues of children around. Many children go through this every day. Why the particular interest in this one? I know you are interested in matters of children, everything. There are a lot of children going through even worse situations. This one, yes, it may be bad in the eyes of the law, but this one, there's some attention and care, maybe wealth and all of that around the lady. She won't suffer. She won't struggle in terms of upkeep, etc. There are children going through this because of poverty and all of that. But we've not seen you and a few others, raising your voices against those. Why this particular one?
Thank you, Selam. But to begin, I'd like to say that it's actually not this particular one alone. I work in child protection as well, and we see children who come in not just with child marriage, but with child sexual abuse and the spectrum. So these are things that we talk about, corporal punishment and all that. We talk about them. Some years ago, we held a forum on corporal abuse or punishment in the schools. And so this is something that's of interest to us. Again, we have deep respect for our traditional leaders. We have a lot of respect for culture and everything that we believe in as Ghanaians. For this particular one, we have somebody who is a role model figure, somebody that we have deep respect for. And if this is the practice or this is what is happening, then is something that is really concerning that we need to speak about, because then hopefully in the future we can work a bit more closely with the traditional leaders and the other authorities to help to bring down the incidence of child marriages in Ghana. So this is really important to us. It came out, everybody saw it, and there was no way that we could be silent about it. Indeed, there are systems in place. The social welfare is there, the child protection units in the various hospitals. Jobs who have a child protection place themselves. I've been there myself, I've seen the setup. So there are a number of systems in place. I dare say that there's more that needs to be done in the area of child protection and protecting children from child sexual abuse and the like. And this is a good way to sort of begin to do more, if I may put it that way.
The social warfare, of course, we've many times complained that such institutions or agencies are not properly funded, and so they are unable to do their work. How sure are we that in this case they have what it takes to see this to the end? Will it be because of the attention this particular case is getting, and so they will have to find resources from wherever to do it, or from what you know, they are well, suited, properly so-called, in terms of resources to see this to the end?
I know that there are challenges in the system or in the setup in Ghana for child protection. Definitely, there are challenges, and there's a lot more that we can do together. It will probably begin from prevention. So putting steps in place to prevent children from being abused in the first place, to require child protection services and to require people being arrested and all that. So that is one area that we need to look at strongly. But the other area of the systems, they need to be sort of supported so that they can function optimally. In this particular case, the police have already put in the mechanisms in place. They've taken the child, she's being protected, being cared for, undergoing the counseling by the psychologist and all that. And so they have begun, and I trust that they'll continue to work to ensure that the child receives all the support that she needs. And for all other children, what our hope is that from this one, we will be able to prioritize child protection services in Ghana and do more to protect all children everywhere in Ghana. Children who are abused, children who have sexual abuse, all those children need to be protected by the state. Sometimes there are issues or cases where you may not have enough shelters. Where to take them becomes a concern or an issue after they have been assessed and identified to have had sexual abuse or been sexually abused. Some of them end up going back to the environment where the abuse was going on. Funding becomes a problem, or money to support the children becomes a problem. So we are hoping that it will open up the conversation and we'll do more to protect children everywhere in Ghana.
I see. Someone wants me to ask you whether the narrative would have been the same if this involved any of the very big chiefs, Yana, Ashanti-Hene, and all of those. Would we have mastered the same courage to push it the way we are pushing? I don't know if it's a fair question or not, but someone wants me to ask you that.
Oh, so what I would say is that we are professionals and we are not partisan. We don't serve the interests of any particular party or any particular traditional authority, or no, we don't. So what it is what we will say it is. So that's what I would say. Once it infringes on the rights and affects the health and well-being of children, we will talk about it, or we'll push for the right things to be done to protect the interests of the child. That is where our interest is. Yeah, that's what I would say. So yes, we would have done the same.
So the Gborbu Palace or the Mensha Palace says, okay, we've identified a young lady who the gods have chosen for themselves. And so this lady must go through this. Maybe just you deal with that briefly. The young lady must go through this. And we'll see this activity on the civil society front. Right.
Yes, of course. Once it involves a child, I'm sure this case is a case that we're discussing because it involves a child.
Yes.
And the circumstances under which this thing was done, and the kind of communication that came out of it. So if it happens in any traditional area, it should still be a subject for discussion because it involves a child. And if there's any element of abuse, irrespective of who the person is, we should be able to talk about it. So as for, it's not even, we should not even do that comparison because every traditional area do have their own rules and regulations and how they practice their culture. But it's cut across. But what we will not allow is where a cultural practices endangers the life of a child. And irrespective of where it's being practiced, there are serious cases that we've handled in the past. So I don't think that there should be an issue or a subject for us to even discuss. Yeah.
The Honorable Reginald Nibia Ibonte is a lawyer, is a royal, and seen quite a bit, former MP as well. He's joined us on Zoom for his take on the matters on phone. Honorable, good morning. Welcome to the program. I guess you're doing well. It's an interesting position I think you hold. You're a lawyer, which means that you deal with rights of people. You're a royal, which also means that you're a traditional man, and so you hold dear our culture and everything. Where do you place, or what's your view on what has been going on so far?
Well, by virtue of my upbringing and where I was born, I would say that this whole kabudo is because of the reportage that was put in the media space. Sometimes the headlines will make all manner of topics for us to discuss. What I learned about media law at the law school is that when you are putting up a story, you should look at the implications. If you are not sure, check and check and check. You know, you should give me the benefit of the doubt. The report says that a 12-year-old girl gets married to a 53-year-old man. What a journalist is expected to do is to go and find out how long has this practice been in existence. Is the current Gborbu Wulomo the first Gborbu Wulomo who might have done that? They should have checked and checked and checked. But once they put it there, and social media gets very fast, people start giving their own comments and then they bring in the criminal aspect and all that. For me, where I come from, we have people we call Deyu, Akomiaye. So they are not performing conjugal duties. The man, as I know him personally, has children who are even older than this young girl they are talking about. But you see, there's a criminality. Anytime there's any occurrence that it affects the welfare of a child, people will certainly talk. The law will also come to protect the child. But our customary law is every custom that's accepted as customary law. That's what we also need to look at. But this girl, I'm told the police have done some work and that he has not been defiled. There's not been there's not been any sexual intercourse. So that is where the problem is, which has excited the academic acumen of intellectuals who are not talking about department. You see, matters of spirituality, you cannot determine it because the Lord does not deal in clairvoyance. Has anybody been told or confirmed that the lady has had sex with the man? I am very worried because I know the man personally. I know he was a former NDC regional aspirant, a former NDC parliamentary candidate. People are trying to twist the thing and then skew it to put some political spin in the thing. But I can tell you that we are making noise about nothing.
I see.
The lady has not been defiled.
Yes, no problem with that. You two things. You mentioned the fact that the media somewhat is to blame for this, but we saw the thing on social media, and we heard the comments being made by the MC. That was what generated the whole thing. So how then do you blame the media for this? The lady MC, you speak down, so you heard all the things she said. These are things said during marriage. Things said during marriage. Number two, we saw a lot of items being carried from one point to the other, presumably to the bride's house or parents, as we've seen or as we see during weddings or engagements or customary marriages. So everything that happened appeared to point to a certain direction, and indeed this was a real marriage. So to be hearing now what we're hearing, that it wasn't a marriage to the man in question, it was an initiation to perform certain roles, etc., appears to be an afterthought. And a way of rearranging the story to make it look good as the laws in the country have been triggered to ensure that the wrongs are corrected and punished. That's what people think. So one, deal with the issue of the headlines. Why do you blame the media when it's your own people who came out to say, I mean, as in the Nungwa people who said the thing. The third point, so 3 points I'm raising, you deal with all of them, is that how long it has been practiced doesn't matter. If it's wrong 10 years ago and the law is still the same, it's wrong today. So whether the media should find out how long it's been practiced, you know, and so it's been done as should be right or wrong, doesn't really arise, does it?
Sometimes you see, when you don't come from an area and you observe something unusual, as a journalist, you check. You want to find out from other traditional rulers. This is what we've seen. How regular or formal is this particular practice where a young girl was seen discovered as a wife in a certain street. So when you check, you say, oh, no, this is our tradition, this is how we do it. But you see, if the journalist who put out the story had checked from other sources to use one enclave, you would have come to know that this is something that they do. For example, human rights, as a girl's human rights been abused. I would say no. I would say no. As a girl been denied access to education, no. So, you see, somebody can even start the argument and say that too. The girls by switching people during the More Festival, they are dirtying the town. It's not an environmental rights issue. So, somebody would have to find out. You ask questions and ask questions and ask questions. If you people want to make the news, no, I was the first break up the news, so you just put this thing out. And then
I still don't understand. I still don't understand your point about the media. This was on social media. It was on people's Facebook pages, etc. Individuals were running their commentary and things based on what they heard. And I'm sure if you heard those things the woman was saying and the age which came out later and all of that, you would have formed the same opinion. You know, so I'm not sure about the media you are opening.
Speaking as a lawyer, I owe a fidelity to the law that if the rights of a child is being abused, I must speak against it. It is so somebody, you go to a town and they are doing that particular festival, and see a young girl, you are the wife of Mustafa Mohammed Samen. It should trigger my interest to find out why it is being done. But everybody picks the start of the story and then starts running with it. And look at it, it just occupied the whole media to national interest in starting a young girl who has been married. I'm very happy that the police said they have done a check on the girl and there have been no conjugal activity regarding the girl and then the man.
All right.
But the way we talk about it, it is as if we want to correct the problem, you don't attack the people's customs. You go to them and find out, you discuss with them. But we don't do that.
But we also understand that there were invitation cards sent out, and the invitation cards had the gentleman's name on it as getting married to this young girl. Does that mean or change anything for you?
Well, the invitation card, even these days, people are invited to festivals of crime, and they even send the invitation card. So how does that?
But the invitation card will show what you are coming to do. If it's a festival, if it's a church service, a harvest, or a marriage. And this one was clear. So was that a mistake too?
Well, I didn't observe it, so I may also have to rely on some of these social media reportage and then give my comments on. But I have seen so many.
So if you were to see the invitation card and it's more these details, would it change your position and all that you're saying?
If you read to me what's captured on the invitation card, then I can make a comment. You didn't say, okay, now you may choose your bride. Did something like that happen?
No, but that doesn't happen in a cultural setting, does it? That's a modern day practice we've seen. You may kiss your bride and all of that. It doesn't happen in typical cultural settings, does it? In fact, the gentleman was not even there, we understand.
Typical cultural settings, who invite anybody to a war festival with a car? You walk into any house and you eat, and that's all.
I see. All right, so we thank you so much for speaking to us on this. We hope that the matters are investigated swiftly so that we see where we go with this. Thank you so much, the Honorable Reginald Nibi-Aibunti, a lawyer and former member of Parliament for Odododu and a royal himself, speaking to us on this. He feels that he's blaming the media for exaggerating the matter, when indeed the thing was streamed live on social media, or it was on social media, and you had the comments passed by the MC asking a lady to dress a certain way to attract the man and do all of that. Indeed, the Gardangbe Council, in their statement, said it was the MC that misled the people. Interestingly, when the MC was supposedly misleading the people, the organizers of the event didn't see it useful to correct that impression. It only came out after the horses are bolted, and that's why people think that the explanations are not consistent. Let me speak to you, Bright, on what you've heard from Nibi. Whether what you make of the comments he has made. He's a royal, he's a guy, he knows the system and all of that.
Well, I've taken opportunity or time to also listen to other people coming from that belongs to this tradition and the various things that they have espoused. So for me, it's not different from what Ni just mentioned. Yes, issue come up, and the issue must come from a certain angle for us to even talk about it. And why we are even talking about it is because, one, we construed it to be a marriage, and two, because of the age. And for that matter, a child is involved in this matter. So clearly, it will raise a lot of issues as to how people will discuss it and the outcome and all that. So I don't think that we should blame the media so much for this, but we should also go back to look at what we've done. You know, even after the publication, how has been the communication from the traditional authority themselves relating to this particular issue? It moved from one step to the other. So clearly, there are issues that we'd have to look at, and let our traditional authorities also know that we all need to learn and know what is at stake when it comes to children. So that when we are engaging children in certain things, we should also know what we are doing. Because for me, I realized that some of them came to that awareness when the law, people were exposing the law to them and some of the things that they are doing. And let me also place on record that the care of the child is not in the hands of the police. So we should not construe that, because matters of this nature is purely within the Department of Social Welfare, because they have the expertise to deal with the child in a manner that the child will not be seen. That once you say it's in the hands of the police, you also create a certain impression because of how sometimes we construe the police to behave and all that. But the child is in the hands of a social welfare department, and they are taking care of everything. But when it comes to security matters, it's the police that are discharging that. But when it comes to the welfare of the child, it's in the hands of the Department of Social Welfare. So a lot has gone on. And you see, even as a lawyer, for you to even put on record that the child has not been defiled, you know, it also raises a whole lot of issues about child protection, because these are not matters. If you have gotten the opportunity to know the outcome of the whatever investigation that the police did, I don't think that is within your jurisdiction or your authority to disclose what it is, because it's about the welfare of the child. And what is happening is going to cause a lot of things to the child, because now we have painted the traditional council has painted the child to be some kind of a mystery. So if the child go to school, the relationship with other people are going to be in question, because no child wants to have a relationship with a mystic personality and all that. So these things, they have to handle it professionally. That is why we are worried about how they are throwing things about. Even within the traditional area itself, they have to be concerned about the state of the child when the child comes back to the community, and how are people going to relate with this particular child. So these are some of the breaks that we have to pull when it comes to certain matters relating to the state of the child. So it's unfortunate that he has put out what information.
Do you think the child should go back to the community, or they should change because of the matters you have raised? Because when she's walking about, people will be pointing fingers at her, and I'm not sure she's old enough to stomach all of that. She goes to school, like you're saying. Should her community be changed? Should her school be changed? What can be done to ensure that she's not so affected by all that has gone on? Because even as an adult, it's not very palatable having you discussed everywhere for some reason, unless it's a good reason. But this not quite so. It's a bit concerning. What do you think? Community should be changed, school should be changed. What do you think?
For me, though it lies in the hands of social welfare to determine whether the child needs to go back to the community or not. From my point of view, I think that looking at what has happened, there have to be a delay in the release of the child into the community. And even if they want to do that, then there must be education in the area or where the child attends school or where the child performs any social life, so that they can sanitize that environment for the child's existence to be conducive. So the outcome of their report will determine whether it is time for them to release the child back to the community or they have to delay the release. And if they have to delay the release, then it means that they also have to look at other circumstances for the child to enjoy her right to education and other social amenities that would develop her. So these are things that they have to take into consideration. But from my point of view, looking at how things are going, I think that social welfare should delay the release of the child and making sure that they prepare the environment well for the well-being of the child before there is any release, if there is a need for that.
Let me speak to Dr. Boy on the same question. Dr. Boy, you want to answer the same question, whether the child's school should be changed, community changed because of the matters, or you think that after all is said and done, she should be released back into the community and to her school?
No, I think he's spoken about it really nicely. He's captured it very well. There needs to be a lot of engagement with the community, education, sensitization, so that they become aware of the impact of whatever had happened on the well-being of the child. So once this is done, then possibly when they are ready, when the child is also ready, then the child could go back. So all these are things that can be analyzed, discussed based on the child, especially because it depends on the state of the child at whatever point in time that this decision is being taken. She has to be well. She has to be psychologically ready and well. And she also sort of will have a say in all this. If she is well, she's happy to go back. All that will be factored in. The parents, the environment, the home situation, all that will be factored in before she can go back into the community.
If, for example, she says that she feels shy to go back to school or to walk in the streets of Nungwa because people say that she is getting married to a deity, a spirit, and all of that, and that makes her shy, would you consider that to be an issue enough to get her relocated from the community and her school?
Yeah, possibly. So this will not be, the therapy that she requires will not be like a one-day therapy. It will have to be a therapy that is ongoing until such a time that she is well enough and feels well enough. Shyness, children feel shy, but in this particular situation, she will need that ongoing therapy. And if she is ready or she's okay to go back, then that could happen. If a change is what is required to make her more comfortable and to make her function at her optimum, then that is what should be done.
How confident are you that the Department of Social Welfare, which many have said are doing a great job so far, will continue to see this to the end when the media attention dies on this? It's been a week, maybe 2 weeks, max 3 weeks. I mean, that's how the news cycle, is. The attention will die down. Something big will come. Everybody will chase that, and this will be left on the back burner. But it's still a real issue. How confident are you that they are able to see this through to the end? The therapy you're talking about will be sustained for a longer time to ensure that the girl is, well and good. How confident are you that the social welfare will be able to see this through to the end, given all that we've heard in the past about how state institutions work, etc., etc.? Are you there?
See to a successful end of it. I'm confident. And we will also keep following the issue or the matter up to contribute to ensure that the best is done for her.
I see. Great. Thanks so much, Dr. Hilda Boy, for speaking to us on this great job you're doing at the Pediatric Society of Ghana. We are grateful for your time. Thanks so much. Let me conclude with you, Bright. With the same question, shyness, at what point will we say that the child is not ready for the society? And so if the community, so if it's a year, the child will keep being at the social welfare place, how does that work?
Yes, any least negative comment from her is a subject to determine whether she is ready to go back or not. And those comments is what the psychologist will work on for her preparedness to go back if there's a need for that. So the least thing around her, well, if she says that she's shy, is a point of reference to determine whether she's ready to go back or not. And that also gives you a physical concerns as to whether you have to place her in that environment again, because it's about her. Once she is saying that I'll be shy, then you are talking about the physical being of the person. So you need to prepare her to fit in. If it will take you 2 years to do that, you should be able to do that. And the other thing also has to do, because of the kind of air that they've created around her, I'm seeing a possibility where if she's released, a huge event will be organized for her welcome. And that, for me, would also have some kind of psychological effect on her in terms of how she will sit in. So let's social welfare should take a very...
What effect? Will it be positive or negative?
It will be negative. It will be negative. Because
welcoming her back into the society?
Yeah, like as if she's been in a certain environment.
She's come back home.
Yes, but so that is why the state must limit some of this participation, not because she's a royal, but because the issue at stake, you need to carry her through a certain process so that she can fit in. Because when you do that, what the picture that you are giving to the child is as if the child is coming, the child has been in prison or has been put in a certain environment and she has been released. So it's a victory, it's a freedom that you have expressed. Then that would also lead to some psychological effect on her. So the whole environment must be so, must be in her interest. And for us to determine that, the psychologist should be able to even determine all those roadmaps before we integrate her into society.
How about the concern that if the attention dies down, social welfare will also, play lax or loose, and things may not go the way we expect? Are you concerned about that?
It's possible that can happen. It has happened in the past, so it is possible. But some of us are still around. There are a lot of human rights organizations that have also spoken about this particular matter. And what our duty should be in this is to also monitor to see what social welfare will be doing afterwards. And then if there's a need for us to also come up with certain report, we should be able to do that.
So where she is, what's the access control like? The proponents, are they able to go to her? Or, how is it like? Who can go to and who cannot?
Well, for now, I think that Social Welfare Department and the ministry, they put embargo on the visit because she is there with a relative and then also two case management officers and then a caregiver. And then periodically you see the minister going there, the officers of the Department of Children going there to render specific services. So it's not an environment that is open for anybody to go there at all. And I'm sure where the Attorney General needs certain information, they can also go in to seek for that information. Where the DOFSU of the police service also requires certain information, they do so. But it's not everybody that is allowed to go there.
We've not heard much about the parents. Where are the parents? And what do they think about what's going on? Do they think it's a privilege, the mother especially? What do they think?
Well, per the information that we have, clearly they also belong to that tradition. So definitely whether they accept it or not, they have to conform to...
Do you think they feel coerced, forced to release their daughter for this purpose?
Well, there was a meeting with them yesterday. We've not had the outcome of that meeting as to whether indeed that is their position. But they've made the law clear to them what it is so far as the child is concerned. And I think that they've been some compliance to that. You know, it is just that, you know, there's a lot of, all kinds of speculations are going on in terms of the care of the child. That is why I'm saying that, per what we have done and our interest in the case so far as the child is concerned, the safety of the child is guaranteed. And I don't think that a traditional area should even be worried about it, or anybody should be worried about it at all. Let's see that at the end of the day, the child will be okay. So the parent, so far so good. But I think that there have been some kind of compromises here and there. So we just waited for the outcome of the investigation, and some basic element that is expected in the process are also going on, and some outcomes are looking good, as I've mentioned it earlier. So let's see how the whole thing goes.
So finally, before you go, of course, you mentioned earlier that the fact that her pictures were all over the place, you know, was an abuse of her rights, etc. But this was supposed to be a celebratory, you know, thing, and so it's a happy thing.
Yeah.
We've seen children's pictures all over the place, not for the bad reasons. This child has worn this, it's on TV, it's still pictures showing. And so once it is not something deemed to destroy the child, or it's not negative to the child,
Exactly.
I'm not sure that would be an abuse
No,
of the
no,
child's
no,
rights.
no,
So
no.
shouldn't it be seen in the same light? Because it was a celebration. It was a big deal, a privilege even. And she's the one chosen by the gods to do this. So her pictures were all over the place. So where would the abuse be?
Yeah, at a point, you would give that definition to it, but where it enters the arena of abuse, of construing the whole event as being abuse of the child's right, because it's a marriage and it's also because it is she's age 12, then all publications must cease for proper investigation to be conducted. Because what gave birth to all these discussions is because of so the media, one is about age, one is about the child. The report and the narrative that you have to give around it should more or less also guarantee the privacy of the child. So the law is clear on that things must always be in the best interest of a child. So where we think that any act, pronouncement would have a negative effect on the child, we should desist from those publications. And this reminds me of yesterday the police issued a report on the arrest of the 6th student of Presec for faking the kidnapping. And it has come to my notice that the children involved are below the age of 18 years. So we expect that even if there's any criminal element in it, these children must be tried under the juvenile justice system. As children, and then their privacy must be protected.
And we know their ages. Do they,
yes,
are they
yes,
children?
yes. Most of them are below the age of 18 years. So we expect that the police, throughout the arrest to when they will do the prosecutions and all that, this thing must happen within our juvenile justice system. So that is just by the way, you know. So all these things must be observed. The media, the traditional authorities, and any person who is involved in treating this particular matter must observe the privacy and dignity of this child in question.
Very well.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Bright.
You.
Thank you so much, as always, for coming in to help us. I appreciate the matters. Bright Apia is the Executive Director of Child's Right International. He's been key in the whole Nungua child marriage saga, and he's just come here to have a discussion. Thanks so much. This is the big issue. We will take a short break. When we return, we'll look at Ghana's power sector and what's been happening between some of the players, Gridco and ECG, and the Ministry of Energy. Don't go away. Hi, welcome back to the big issue. Just gone by discussion on the very social discussion and legal discussion as well on the child marriage, alleged child marriage between the Gborbu Wulomo and a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, now a 16-year-old lady, and how the story is evolving, that indeed she was not married to the Gborbu Wulomo. It was indeed to the deity, and that she was to perform certain rites, etc. Matters under investigation. The girl has been kept somewhere by the social welfare, and we understand things are moving on well. We hope the investigation concludes quickly, and everybody gets their life back. All right, so now let's deal with Ghana's power sector. Gridco, ECG, load shedding, PURC, and all of that. You know, if you have noticed, which I'm sure you have, we've had a number of problems with power outage. And the discussion has been whether a load timetable should be issued or not. And the minister says he doesn't see the need for it. People calling for the load shedding timetable, wish evil for the country and all of that. But this is quite a technical discussion we hope to engage in this morning. And Gridco is written to the Minister of Energy, citing what they call the non-compliance of ECG in respect of the load management instructions from the National Systems Control Center. My guest to help me deal with these matters will be one, Dr. Theo Champong, who is an energy economist, Benjamin Boachi, Executive Director, Africa Center for Energy Policy. We are hoping to get Jifa Bampo from the Gridco, she's Head of Communication, and then Nana Musi, the 7th, Executive Director, Institute of Energy and Security. Gentlemen and lady, welcome to the program. Let me start with you, Doc Theo Champong. Good to have you again. But, of course, the discussion about Dumso or not, we don't even know where we stand in respect of what the status of our energy situation is. You have done quite some work on this. Can you tell us from a technical viewpoint whether what we are experiencing is what we have defined for ourselves as Dumso or not?
Okay, good morning and pleasure to be here. And I was going to say, well, if you've got Ben and Anam we see in there, then you probably wouldn't need me. But that's just by the way. Is it Dumso or not? If you look at the fact that you have your lights going off and on, and in the Akan language, right, that is basically what it means. And you're getting persistent power outages, not once, not twice, but consistently over a period of time. I struggle to see why we cannot characterize that as Dumso. Of course, there's a political undertone to all of this. So Dumso came in during the last administration, and the current regime and the managers are trying any and everything not to call it Dumso. But if you look at the fact that you've got a deficit in generation currently, which is not able to meet the demand that you've got in the system, then you have to shed load. And if you're shedding load and the local people have a name or a balance for it, then, I mean, it is what it is. Let's not beat about the bush. I think the important thing is for us to plan and for citizens to have some sort of timetable that they can plan their lives by. The last couple of nights, I spoke to my mom back in Ghana, and the light had just gone off for well over 4 or 5 hours. And like I said, during that particular week, the light had gone off at least 3 times in the particular vicinity that she was. And these are not localized faults. These are issues at a system level where you just don't have enough generation capacity coming on stream. And I think it's an important point to also state that, you know, we've got the installed capacity, we've got the dependable capacity, and what is actually available to generate and transmit. If you look at our installed and the available capacity from the 2023 statistics that I've got here from the Energy Commission and PRC and the likes, we on paper should have more than enough to be able to cover or cater for our electricity requirements. So for example, we should be having close to 4.8 gigawatts or 4,800 megawatts of generation capacity or dependable capacity rather, right? But we are not able to deploy all of that to the grid. My checks indicate that we're doing just a little over 3,000 megawatts or 3 gigawatts at any particular point in the last couple of weeks. All right, and when you juxtapose that against a demand in excess of 3.8 gigawatts, then you can see why that shortfall comes in, and therefore why you have to shed load, or to put it very bluntly, why doomsor, must happen. But importantly, why we need a timetable. The citizens of Ghana need a timetable so they can plan their lives with and by. There are times you wake up and you don't know whether you're going to have power or not, and you cannot plan and do things without knowing where that or when that electricity is going to come by. Two other quick points to this really then is it comes down to the issue of money, more or less, right? You need money to be able to buy the fuel to get the plants on stream. And then there are some of the electricity plants that actually also are undergoing maintenance currently. But the bigger issue is basically the fact that some of the monies that are being collected, especially at ECG, which is the distributor, is not being remitted enough in terms of the volumes, and then also on time as per the cash for water mechanism that was set up to the IPPs and then to the other fuel suppliers. So there's even been instances where they've had to threaten, more or less, curtailing supply to force ECG and other players, to pay monies that are owed them. So that's really where things are at the moment. We need a timetable. I lend my support and credence to all of that. But importantly, we need to fix the big mess that is, at ECG in terms of collections and then also other operational efficiencies.
Great. Ben, welcome to the program. Fixing the big mess, as Doc is stated. What will be this big mess, and how do we begin to fix this big mess, Ben Wachi?
Thank you for having me, and thanks for the kind words.
Hello, Ben.
Theo. Can you hear me?
Yes, quite faintly.
All right. Okay. So thanks for having me, and good morning to Theo and Anna as well. No, I think the energy sector issues are dire. For me, we've been sounding this alarm for some time now, even when the light was on. And we thought that the state was unnecessarily intervening by paying billions every year to pretend to keep the lights on. And very soon it was going to catch up on all of us. And we kept writing and talking about it, that we shouldn't wait to get here. We needed to fix the distribution end of the power value chain to prevent this kind of situation where now we are cash strapped. We don't have enough money to be able to buy fuel to bring power plants that are available on. And for that matter, we need to share the load. And this is the difficulty. If the IMF was not in the picture, I'm sure government would have spent all our money to go buy fuel just to keep the lights on. All right, but now it's getting difficult for you to now inject more money when you know the money is not going to come, from the power sector. So the urgent thing for us to do is to just go back to the drawing board and honestly ask ourselves whether we can pretend to be managing the utility, the ECG, where we do know that we have failed over time as a country to manage it on our own. And that is purely the politics that interferes with sound corporate governance issue that allows the business to run. So we need to go back to the drawing board, invite the private sector quickly, and let them manage it professionally so that we can raise the money that is needed. The power is generated in souls. How come we can identify those who are going to make money and pay the value? All right, and that is what is missing. The missing piece is really fixing the distribution side of the value chain and being able to generate enough revenue to pay everybody else. And if we fail to do this, we'll be talking every day, discussing things when there are other important issues to be discussing, but the fuel for the economy, if it is not available, then of course the discussion will keep going on.
I see. In terms of collection, the ECG in recent months under its new leadership has brought renewed drive into collecting monies owed them by individuals, institutions, even state institutions. I mean, parliament, etc. have been disconnected at one point or the other for owing, hospitals, schools, etc. How much of an impact has this drive made in terms of collection, and which should bring some relief to the finances of the ECG so it's able to pay its debtors, IPPs, etc., and get fuel for the plants to run?
You see, when we try to correct some of the numbers and impressions, the optics that ECG puts out, we feel it's personal, but we use data, we analyze data to show that the claims are not sustainable when you compare them with what is happening in the industry. You have the tariff adjusted between 2022, the major tariff adjustment, and end of last year, 100% adjustment. So if you have that adjustment, business as usual, you should double your revenue, all right? Because the tariff has been adjusted. So for the same unit of energy sold, you should be able to double your revenue. So if ECG comes to say that they have doubled their revenue, and it's because of some special work that they have done, and ignore the fact that the tariff has been adjusted that significantly, they are being disingenuous. And the data should bear that out. And that is what we keep pointing out. And they don't want to agree that the extra that we expect from ECG, it's not coming. We are not seeing that extra work. Beyond that nominal adjustment, like for like, in energy sold, there has also been an increase in consumption. What that means is that the amount that you were selling in the past has changed. You are selling more today. So ordinarily, it shouldn't be just 100% jump in revenue. It should be more than that because you are selling more than you were selling in the past. And we are not seeing a reflection of all of this in the numbers that you are showing us. And that is what makes it extremely difficult for us to appreciate. If you look at the numbers that PRC puts out, today, ECG is expected to collect about 1.92 billion Ghana cedis every month. They are doing between 800 and the best they've done in a month about 1 billion cedis. So where does the extra billion come from? Where do we get it? To be able to pay for the under recoveries that are established by Federal. We need to account for that. So rather than telling us numbers, billions and millions that you collect every month, tell us the total liability, the total picture, how much you are supposed to pay, the value chain, and how much you actually pay. Then people can begin to appreciate whether you are putting in the right effort or not. But as we stand, we are accumulating more debt in the sector. And the budget estimation for government alone to absorb every month is over 250 million Ghana cedis a month. All right? Yeah. So if government is going to sacrifice the budget and pay 200 million, and which they are even not able to pay in most cases, it piles up. And that goes to affect even the state institutions like DRA and PICO who are supposed to be paid through that channel. If they don't get money, then they are just waiting. We are not investing in the grid. DRA is not investing. They need money to be able to maintain some of the plants. TAPCO is down, and the rest of it. So these are difficult moments that we need to use data and numbers to appreciate and see what decisions we really need to take. But those efforts you talk about, they don't reflect in the data.
I see. Great. Let me quickly speak to Nana Moisi, and I'll get back to you. Nana, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for your time as always. Of course, we've spoken many times on the situation and all of that, but we just saw a letter dated 28th March 2024 addressed to the Minister for Energy from the GRIDCO. And it is titled Non-Compliance with Load Management Instructions from the National System Control Center. This came to us not so much as a surprise, but as if the GRIDCO is reporting the ECG to the minister. Of course, in the last few days, the ECG appears to be laying the blame at the doorstep of GRIDCO, that GRIDCO is not transmitting enough to them. That's why they are unable to also distribute and all of that. So speaking from outside, it does appear there's some tussle or some difficulty between the two institutions. You've seen the letter. What does the letter mean? Titled Non-Compliance with Load Management Instructions from the National Grid Control Center. Is it a case that GRIDCO advises ECG to undertake proper load management, which should mean issuing timetables, etc., and ECG is not complying. Is that the understanding from this letter?
Thanks for having me this morning. Good morning to your viewers as well. And sorry for joining late. We also cited a letter just about a day or two ago, and it came to confirm the sort of, should I say, conflict or confusion between particularly the government-owned utilities or entities within the power sector. You wonder whether it's a power struggle or one is just being unreally stubborn in complying with directive. It is the same ECG that was directed by the PRC to produce a timetable for consumers, and it chose not to comply. And of course, yes, it had the backing of the minister to say that if you need one, produce one yourself. The same ECG is also mentioned here with respect to not following command from the control center. GRICO is a system operator and sits at the central point between the producer of power or producers of power and the distributors. And so whilst GRICO is trying to fuel the power from the generation end to box supply point through their feeders, it expects of the distributor, being the ECG this time, to also move the power according to the directive of the same transmitter, GRICO. If you draw it more beyond what you expected to do, then of course you are seeking to bring down both frequency and voltages, and that has implication on the stability of the grid, not just the distribution grid, but also the transmission grid. If it does happen so, it could impact on the generation end as well, and could force a shutdown of all the power plants or some of the power plants. And bringing back these power plants online when they go down cost huge dollars. And so we think that the ECG has not been, what should I use? Has not been fair to all Ghanaians, and is putting the whole grid at risk. And note something here, energy security is a matter of national security. And so if one entity is working stubbornly against the system operator's command, then that person must be brought to order. And I think that the ECG must be investigated on this matter, because if you bring down the frequency, then of course you are putting the entire grid at risk. You are putting equipment and appliances that are connected to the grid at risk, and you are putting Ghanaians also at risk. Operating below 50 hertz. Normally in Africa, we use our 50 hertz as a frequency nominal, and so you can have it at 49.5 or 50.5. That's okay, but anything below 49.5 is a huge risk to how stable and how reliable the grid will be. And so it's a good call, at least hearing from the GRICO for the first time and calling on the doors of the minister to intervene and ensure that the right things are followed, the right procedures are complied with to save the grid. It's a good one. At least GRICO has broken its silence since we started having these major challenges.
I see. In the light of all of that, ECG issues a statement on one of its notifications or announcements, it calls it, titled Stable National Grid. I mean, I'm sure it will be displayed on the screen soon. It says the Electricity Company of Ghana wishes to inform our cherished customers and general public that we have a stable national power supply, stable national grid. Any customer who is currently experiencing power outage is due to a localized fault. And so now, look at this statement issued on the Friday, 29th March, and then the letter from GRICO a day before, 28th March 2024, and put the two together for us. GRICO is saying that ECG is failing to go by the guidelines of the National System Control Center, and so puts the systems, at risk. Obviously telling us that there's some generational gap, and the power they feed to ECG it's not necessary, may not necessarily be enough to cater for everybody. Now, ECG is telling us that if there is any outage, that is due to a localized fault. It is not referencing the issue about generational deficiency or gap. What does all this mean?
The first statement that you placed out with ECG claiming that we have a stable national power supply, quoted in brackets, stable national grid, is misleading. Very, very misleading. And we find it quite scandalous because, one, there's a difference between a stable national power supply than also a stable national grid. You can't equate the two here. A stable national power supply means that it refers to the reliability of power supply and consistency with the supply, and that there are minimal outages when you say a stable national power supply. But let's ask ourselves today, are we having minimal outages? Aren't we having major outages across the country? And so there's nothing like a stable national power supply. Now let's come to the stable national grid. ECG control just a bit of the grid and cannot speak for GRIDCO that contains or controls a bulk of the grid system, because the grid has to do with both the transmission and the distribution network here. Let's come to ECG's own network. They are complaining about 630 transformers overloaded. That's even a threat to the grid stability in the first place. Number two, here we come with the second letter from GRIDCO, making it clear to us that the same ECG is threatening the grid stability because it's failing to comply with instruction. You ask yourself, what is the motivation for ECG to go against the instruction of the system controller, the GRIDCO, and seek to draw more power than necessary from the same grid? One, could it be that it's financial motivation, that they want to sell more power when the power is not available to get money? When you draw more than necessary, you are not just reducing the frequency, but you're also lowering the voltages in the system. And that itself is a problem. Number two, is the ECG bending to political pressures or regulatory pressure? Is somebody asking them to pull power unnecessarily so that everybody can be served, and there's nothing, so that nothing is recorded as load shedding? If you do that, then you're putting everybody at risk. The ECG must be forthright with us. It cannot be changing and giving us different excuses for the same problem that we've recounted and pronounced over the last 3 weeks from the civil society space and other Ghanaian actors. Today, the cat's out of the bag. It's clear. ECG, GRIDCO has spoken that we receive few as compared to, or receive something less compared to the quantum of power that we need for during our peak demand. And so power must be shared. And that's the work of ECG to do, to manage the load given to you and not mismanage that load.
I see. Great. Let me speak to Dr. Theo Champon. I presume you've seen this letter from GRIDCO as well. Days before this letter was issued, I mean, everybody was blaming GRIDCO, that GRIDCO is the one that transmits to ECG. ECG only deals with what they are given. Painting a picture as if GRIDCO was not doing its job and ECG was now left to struggle and suffer and all of that. Now, this letter does clearly show that there's some difficulty between the two. Now, on the second page of it, it says, when these emergency disconnections occur, tracing a number of things. When these emergency disconnections occur, ECG publishes customer notices attributing the loss of power supply to GRIDCO, which is not an accurate description of the current situation. And they state a few other things. This clearly shows that there's an issue. How do we resolve this? How do we resolve this? They've written to the minister. The minister obviously must step in and resolve. But the minister is not in favor of a load management timetable, which GRIDCO appears to be looking.
The minister says we should all go. We should produce our own timetable, isn't it?
Yes,
and all of that. But fundamentally, there's a coordination problem, right? And it has been for a while. So this didn't just blew in the sense, because what both Nana and Ben have said, and what I'm also saying is, things shouldn't even get to the point where you're getting contradictory statements from very important state agencies or institutions that are responsible for managing the grid and transmitting it, right? So you see a bit of blame game happening, here in this context, and you can unpack the argument both from the GridCo and the ECG side. And when ECG says that there's a stable grid, stable national supply, it just doesn't wash. The facts don't bear, that out. And in fact, from where I sit between GridCo and ECG, because GridCo sits in the middle, they are the system manager, transmit electricity to the different end customers. I am actually more inclined to believe GridCo than I would believe ECG, on that score. But I think what needs to happen, which is the point that you really asked, is also beyond what the minister would do, get PURC, and they started cracking the whip. But we need to get PURC, which is they regulate the economic aspects of the industry, so tariffs and pricing. We've also got the Energy Commission, which is the technical regulator. There has to be some roundtable and some consensus on the way forward. But what is very clear to us from the civic space is that things cannot continue as they are at the moment. And any solution to the problem that does not address the root cause of it, which is ECG, power collection or power billing, under recoveries, operational inefficiencies, and all of that, until we address that, we're still going to be dealing with these issues every now and then. In fact, Salom, I can point you to a 2013 report that was done by the World Bank. It was published on the 13th of July, 2nd of July rather, 2013. And the title is Energizing Economic Growth, Getting Ghana's Power Sector to Rise Up to, let me get a specific title, Energizing Economic Growth, Making the Power and Petroleum Sectors Rise to the Challenge. And in that report, if you actually look at the electricity section of the report and the issues that they cataloged back then, so this is, 11 years ago, you can almost play the same script and you will see that 10 years down the line, a lot of the issues that were raised about procurement inefficiencies, about challenges with collection of receipts, particularly at the level of ECG, inventory management, all of those issues still persist as we speak today, to the point that when you even look at some of the other technical indicators, the commercial and the technical losses, in fact, these numbers have actually gone up when they should be going down. The sub-Saharan African average for your combined electricity transmission distribution losses is around 12.5%, 13%. Ours is averaging over 30%, right? So clearly something is amiss. And if we don't fix the problem at the roots, then what will happen is we'll be here debating this issue going in, every few years. Because what is happening clearly is the fact that you've got enough capacity there, but you're not able to deploy. And you're not able to deploy because you don't have the money, and some of the plants are on maintenance, and you don't have the money because ECG is not collecting, those monies, and even the ones that they do collect that they should remit to the players within the value chain, that money is not being done or distributed according to the cash waterfall mechanism. This same cash waterfall mechanism, by the way, in 2019, when the issues came up again, we on our own accord produced the energy sector recovery plan, of which the cash waterfall mechanism is a part of, right? And again, if you look at that document, the projections were that by now, going into 2025, these problems should not even, persist in the first instance, right? But we came with a solution and we did not implement the solution. And it's now had to take the IMF to force us as part of the current program to come up with a version, right, of that same energy sector recovery plan. So you begin to ask yourself sometimes in the tree language, right? Are we going or are we coming? Because it's like you make one step forward and sometimes you take a couple of steps backwards. But these problems are recurrent, in my view, because we're not addressing the root cause and the fundamental issues that are bedeviling the sector.
I see. Ben, so the PURC gave the ECG, the distributor, a number of things to do. They issued a statement or an update on compliance or otherwise on the 4th of April, 2024, and an earlier one on the March 28, 2024. The March 28 one, which is the subject of interest now, compliance in respect of operational matters. They asked the ECG to publish timetables or provide them with timetables they've published for the transformer injection. All of that they claimed was a problem. They said some 600 transformers were the problem, etc. And so they should provide them with evidence of publication of load management timetable corresponding with the timelines and duration of each transformer injection. The ECG hasn't complied. They failed to comply. And the status of that, according to the update from PURC, is not complied, not complied. I know the law, Section 38 of the PURC Act, provides them some powers to punish and sanction and all of that, penalize and all of that. Is the PURC able to crack the whip the way the law says it should? Do they have what it takes to do that, given all the political economy issues, the explanations given and all of that? You think the PURC is in a position to do that, to crack the whip?
No, I think it's a very difficult situation for the PURC because you have, leaders who were all appointed by the same person. And therefore, showing muscle to actually regulate them has become very difficult. And that's why you're seeing, the effort to document some of these directives, ECG. But the thing that they did not comply with, issuing the geocodes of the plants that the transformers that they said were under repairs or were faulty. ECG was smart to say that they have finished everything and the grade is stable. So if you have a problem, then it's localized fault. So when directly telling PURC that they no longer have that problem, they have resolved those problems, but they could still be other localized fault that they may need to identify. So they ran away from that conversation about 630 transformers, having issues. To now state that everything was working, and therefore they didn't need to comply with that. But also the directive for them to comply with, a load management timetable, they have not. And PURC has indicated that they're still, those directives are still pending, so they need to comply with them. What I think PURC fell short was to also highlight and tell the public, but they also know that there is a generation shortfall. So PURC also knows, and they know that there's a deficit in generation. So why should they fall short of telling the Ghanaian people that ECG, there is a shortfall that everybody knows? Go and produce a timetable. I think that's where the gap really is, so that everybody knows that the regulator also knows what's happening in the industry. But they have not done that. So we have to insist that PURC directive should ask them to go and issue the timetable when all of us know that there is a generation shortfall. And GRICO has also written to the minister to complain about how ECG is, deliberately refusing to issue the timetable.
Mm-hmm. I see. So what do you foresee, or how long do you foresee that we'll be going through this particular round of outages? Is this something you think will be resolved soon, or you think we'll be in it for a while?
It's cash issue. If there's money available today, fuel will be procured. Some of the power plants can come on to eliminate the deficit. But there's also that again need for us to now begin to think, how do we bring in more efficient power plants that will require less of fuel and produce more power? That's what efficiency really is. A lot of the plants we have here are aging. AXA is over 20 years. TAPCO is over 20 years. TICO is old. A lot of the plants are old. And we need to plan to bring in more efficient power plants that can be more reliable. And also let these plants go on maintenance when they have to, so that we don't overwork them. So that system planning and ensuring that things are working professionally is where we need to fill in. But if we have money to bring in fuel today, the load management can at least be managed to a greater extent today. But the reality is, do we encourage government to keep pumping money when they know that ECG will not collect the money to pay that? Because any fuel you buy and give to the power generators and transmitted to the distribution value chain is going to get wasted. You're not going to get the money back. So that for me is the biggest dilemma that the government needs to critically examine now and take the right decision. The right decision today is to wake up on Monday morning to hear that government has agreed to privatize ECG immediately, so that we can then have a regulator that is independent and managing the private sector, without these kinds of directives, and we should be deciding that it is its own boss, it won't respond to anybody. The private sector couldn't have done that to either Greco or to PR, right, without sanction. So we need to get that work to bring back the grid to a more stable supply.
I see. Thank you so much, Membachi, for your insights as always. Grateful for your time this morning. Nana, of course, we heard earlier in the week, not be officially confirmed by the presidency though, that the president is giving directive to the players in Ghana to stop VRS, especially to stop the export of power to our neighboring countries, just to take care of the shortfall we have locally. Good decision. What impact would that have on the finances of the generators, for example, who sell the power to these countries and get hard cash dollars to help them do other things? What impact will it have on them?
Well, I think that there's nothing wrong in ensuring that you meet your domestic demand before your external customers. And in this case, we're talking about Benin, Togo, Côte d'Ivoire, and Burkina Faso. Yes, they are neighbors, and the VRA has agreed that it will sell to them power for hard currency. If we choose to not export to them, then of course, yes, the VRA is going to lose revenue here. But then we don't know how much risk analysis has been done with respect to this decision. If they are taking that quantum of power, which is roughly between 250 megawatts and 300 megawatts, and directing it to industries for productive purposes, which would generate some, taxes and levies for government, also grow the economy, and ensure, stability of jobs, then it's okay. If that's outweigh the cost or the gains from the power sales, then it's okay. However, there are also negative, implications. If you choose not to sell to these countries, then the VRA is going to lose revenue here. Already, that's also another struggling entity. And so they will not be able to meet their obligation to their financiers. They will not be able to.
All right, I think...
to undertake their aim.
But Nana, go ahead, yes, your line was a bit tricky, but go ahead. Yeah.
Side impacting on VRA's financial, position negatively. The next is that if this halting of exports is extended, then of course, at a point, these countries will begin to look elsewhere for power. And when we are ready and we get back to them, we may have lost that export market to another supply end. The next is that we invested in infrastructure, not just the generation infrastructure, but also transmission, increasing, extending transmission lines to this country for purpose of exports. And we took loan on the back of this infrastructure development. And so if we choose not to export, then of course, money has to be found elsewhere to pay for the cost of putting up those infrastructure. So it's a two, way things here. One positive, one negative, which must be analyzed well, and so that we ensure that we get the best out of this decision. But however, this decision is not sustainable and will not address the load shedding we are seeing, because the gap in here between the required load from consumers and what is produced is roughly about 600 megawatts. If you take 250 megawatts from the export market for domestic use, you still have something close to 400 megawatts as deficit, of which load must be shared. And so this is not a sustainable approach. It's not a game changer. We'll still be seeing the doom we are seeing until a permanent, sustainable solution is found.
I see. Thank you so much, Nana. We understand you were in a meeting, but so grateful for your time as always, making time to speak to us on this. We are grateful. Thank you so much. Nana Moisi the seventh is the Executive Director of the Institute for Energy Security. Now, Doc, your final words on this really. I want to have your take on the power exports, the fact that there's been some directive to discontinue that in the time being, so we deal with our domestic matters. VRA gets money from that place to do other things which we benefit from. Now, if they are to stop the export, that money that comes, that they use essentially to help us get the little we are getting even in Doomso, may not come. So how does it play out?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right, and for me, it's a short-term fix to a more long-term problem that we've got. And even contractually, I'm not exactly sure how that will work, because I don't presume that we can just wake up one day and say that we're not going to export that 200 or so megawatts to our neighbors and turn off the taps. There has to be some contractual mechanisms and arrangements, and it may even, be a couple of weeks before that happens, because they then have to put in alternative, arrangements. And you're right also about the fact that this also gives the likes of VRA, hard currency forex to be able to support their operations. So I'm not necessarily inclined as to the fact that you should stop that 200 megawatts, one, for the contractual reasons that I've enumerated about. But number two, even if you did, given the quantum of the deficit that we've got currently, like Nana was telling you, it's just going to be a teardrop, right, in the ocean. And so what we should be doing really is trying to get more of the capacity that we already have that has not come on stream to come on stream. And then in a more medium to long term, it's about a plan to get new generation capacity. So some of the plants are relatively old. We need newer ones coming on stream, and using even things like auctions for renewable energy, we can again bring in some additional capacity that would not only be reliable, but importantly also cost competitive. Because one of the things that we actually haven't maybe talked a lot about here is the cost of power itself, right? Where it's a disincentive to actually pursuing industrialization in the country. And the long-term plan, as I'm aware, is actually to drop or bring down the cost of power to like 7 cents a kilowatt hour. That is the only way we'll be able to then drive, more productive use of energy, especially for industry. So the more medium to long term, and in the midst of a crisis, is when you have to start planning and planning properly. In the more medium to long term, that's what we've got to be doing. New capacity additions that are more reliable, include some renewables in there and bring down the cost of power so that our businesses can compete, within the sub-region.
I see. Great. We ran out of time, but I wish I could take 30 seconds view on the PURC's position, what they should do next, given the responses from ECG to them. Some mostly complied, but the key ones not complied. 30 seconds. What should be the PURC's position going forward now?
Yeah, I think the PURC has actually issued another statement, and this is on their website. So the statement is actually dated the 4th of April 2024.
Okay.
Yes, and it's an update on the earlier compliance order from the 18th of March 2024. And in that document, you can see a number of the things that they wanted ECG to do, which they were struggling with earlier in terms of non-compliance. You can see that it says that the documents have been submitted and they are under review. So for example, 2.1b or order 2.1b says that the total amount of fuel ECG procured for power generation from August 2023 to date. And then the status, it says the documents have been submitted and they are under review.
Okay.
Same thing with
for almost all of them.
So I think let's wait for the PURC's
to review those
next
documents.
line of action. And to commend them, they've been quite forthright in terms of putting information out there in the public domain.
Very well. Thank you so much, Dr. Theo Echampo, political risk analyst and energy economist, speaking to us on the matters of Ghana's power sector. You also heard Nana Muisi, the 7th Executive Director, Institute of Energy Security, Benjamin Boachi, Executive Director, Africa Center for Energy Policy, ACEP. Thank you so much, you out there, for doing the viewing and the listening. My name is Salom Adonu. Catch you same time next week for yet another exciting edition. Have a good afternoon.